Coogs House. Houston Cougar Milos Uzan faces a difficult decision on his future this month, and the NBA Combine is not making it any easier.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Basically, making your first listen each and every day as the everydayer you are. If you want to join the conversation, but you don't want to say in the comments down below, taking a straw poll here. What is the worst thing you had to do for an allowance of any kind? And I'm talking about your typical kind of chores. I personally, we had a long driveway. I hated taking the trash out. I'm an easy gagger. There was always kind of like stuff in there. Anyway, the smells got me. Never liked that. Always traded it out for other chores if I could. Today's show is brought to you by Wayfair. More on that later. But I got a lot to get into today, and it kind of winds around a lot to what's going on right now with the Houston Cougars. I do want to talk some about Houston wrapping up the regular season in baseball in the final third segment here. I want to talk some about the financial numbers that are rolling back from the Final Four trip to San Antonio. As painful as the final 65 seconds that was, let's say money talks, and it wasn't so painful after all. But first and foremost, today's show, I want to talk some about Milos Uzan, the update in the Combine. 2 days in the Combine will go on through the end of the weekend in Chicago. Players are doing tests and drills and things like that in front of scouts and GMs from NBA organizations. Milos Uzan is the only Houston Cougar there. He is also the only underclassman to opt to go to the draft. With eligibility left to opt to go to the draft. The Houston Cougars, and face a difficult decision. He can come back to Houston. He has said repeatedly that if he does not complete the NBA draft process, that he will return to Houston. He has until May 28th to make that decision. I anticipate with the NBA Combine wrapping up this weekend, he'll probably take a couple days and decide. I don't think he'll push to the deadline quite yet. For instance, we are seeing Boogie Fland. I guess he was an Arkansas guy, entered the Combine and has already pulled his name out and said he's going to go. I believe I'm seeing people saying Florida. You can check out Locked On Gators for that later, I'm sure. But Milos Uzan's days have been interesting, and it's making for interesting possible outcomes. Look at the shooting drills. He's at or near the top in most every category. Killed it from shooting threes in the star drill they do, in which you're constantly like running to the half court or sideline and getting back to the three-point line to shoot a three-pointer. Catch and shoot after running is the thought process there. Absolutely killed it. Mid-range floaters. The guy's got game. We know he can shoot and score. He came in at 6'3" and change. 6'5" wingspan. Gives him a standing reach of 8'1", just over 8'1". Came in 186 pounds as well. So, pretty lean, long point guard, but definitely not big enough to play anything besides point guard at the NBA level. And that, is part of the deal here. He's a big point guard for sure. I should also point, I guess, that they measure guys without shoes on. So functionally, I guess he's 6'4" on the floor because he would never play without shoes on. But, and so that all was good. His vertical testing and his speed and agility stuff was all good, not elite. We knew he wasn't a 40-inch vertical kind of guy or anything quite like that. And so he kind of had been doing well for himself throughout those drills. They get to the game, and they played a scrimmage on Wednesday afternoon. They divided up the players there into teams. Not everyone that's there opted to participate in that. And frankly, there are some guys that think they can only hurt their stock. Like, what does Cooper Flagg have to prove, right? What does VJ Edgecombe have to prove, right? They got enough game tape out there. But some guys want to show what they can do in an NBA officiated, NBA floor space kind of situation. I would think that does Milos pretty well. And he had an up and down scrimmage. Statistically, he was 1 of 4 shooting in his 17 minutes on the floor, 0 of 2 from behind the three-point line. He did have 4 assists and no turnovers. He had a rebound. A very Milos Uzan first half stat line at Houston. It would not have been crazy to see him get just a couple points and see him get a few assists, come out in the second half, and if the ball came to him in the right spots, he'd maybe score some more, or he'd keep up the same thing. It's not a crazy stat line for anyone that followed him. However, I do think that one of the things that separates him from other point guards, if he wants to be drafted at a spot where he can get some guaranteed money, is that shooting ability, right? It was certainly part of his impact in Houston and one of his biggest offensive growths from his time at Oklahoma. Didn't get to show that off, right? And so you hear him back and forth. Jeff Borzello of ESPN, who does, updates his mock draft stuff every day, and he still has Uzan as a fringe top 40 pick. That's significant because the top 30 all get contracts guaranteed as first round picks. Second round isn't guaranteed, but those first few typically get them, and then a handful after that might. And so that top 40 line kind of feels like where you can get some money for sure. Obviously, the top 30 is the only guarantee. Milos Uzan told Chris Baldwin, I guess Milos Uzan's family told Chris Baldwin of Paper City Magazine that if he didn't get a guarantee from someone to get a contract or get some guarantees about his positioning, he probably would come back to Houston. And he really, he had a very up and down first 2 days, and so he's got a few more days to figure this out, but it leaves us with the question of, like, what's he going to do? Kelvin Sampson is there. He spoke with some media that is there in Chicago at the Combine as well. He's there to support his guys, right? Support his guy, I guess I should say. And it was interesting. He told Chris Baldwin on Paper City Mag while they were up there that most coaches run or try to stay away from confrontation with their players. Kelvin Sampson, think you have to embrace it for the ones who need it. He actually confronted Milos after the scrimmage and was like, hey, pick yourself back up. Like, this is not your, like, let's get back out here and play some basketball, right? And so we'll see how that translates into Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, et cetera. And I think it's fascinating because that feels like it means all of this is very authentic when Kelvin and Kellen and the staff say they want guys to go test this dream out. Everyone dreams of playing in the NBA, the NBA Finals, etc. March Madness and winning college championships and Big 12 championships, those are certainly parts of the dream. But that dream, the pinnacle, is the NBA, and so you got a chance, you should take it. I love what Kellen said the other day about how ultimately, truthfully, you want guys who put their name out there and try this because you don't want them wondering what if a few months later when they're playing for you. You want it to be their decision, truthfully, right? Now, the roster that Uzan be leaving behind is interesting in that you're seeing point guards kind of snatched up across all of college basketball and the transfer portal. I will say I heard a lot of reputable people talking about over the last few days that part of the reason Houston didn't get involved in too much of that, they reached out to a couple that would have been excellent, obviously. And it sounds like there may have been some under the table, like, hey, hold off, let's do what Milos does, and we'll talk to you if we need something. And those guys ultimately decided to go elsewhere. I'll leave it at that. I do think, though, that what you're seeing is Houston realizing that, look, what we've got here without Milos is Kingston Fleming's, a lot of it, a 5-star freshman Gatorade player of the University of Texas. We're going to roll with him as a starter if Milos doesn't come back. You also then have some Pop Isaacs minutes there. He can serve you. It's not his natural. You got Mercy Miller somewhere in the rotation. I think Cordell Jefferson's toughness gets him on the floor at some point, and it could be this winter if Milos is not back. And then obviously if Milos ought to come back, you're returning a second-team All-Big 12. He was the player of the game in the Big 12 championship game. I guess they didn't quite hand that award out. It was the tournament, and that went to Emmanuel, but he had the best performance in that. He had the game winner against Purdue. He had a tremendous game against Tennessee. And while, his best games were not in San Antonio, he certainly was an integral part of you getting there in the first place, right? And so your rotation with him, right, you've got him, Pop Isaacs, Emmanuel, Chris Sinak, JoJo Tugler. You bring back 3 starters from your team that got to the national championship. You replace LJ Cryer with Pop Isaacs. It feels very like plug and play kind of stuff there. And then Chris Sinak, a 5-star freshman at the forward spot. And as you'll note, the rotation doesn't do a whole heck of a lot different if you simply take out Milos Uzan and move over Kingston Flemings. For the audio audience, it's just this little chart here I got going about who's in the rotation and who's my projected starters with or without Milos. Milos's decision will be big. Could lead Houston to another Final Four. And the Final Four is going to be another big deal. But we're finding out more about how the Final Four that we just had was a very big deal for this Houston Cougar program and the school as a whole financially. But as we get to that, I do want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Wayfair, because as the days are getting longer and the weather is warming up, people are spending more time outside. As hot as it was on Wednesday, I know we sure did. It means it's the perfect time to get your outdoor space all put together. That means new furniture for the outside, big backyard, small balcony, whatever you need. Wayfair has everything you need to make it feel more like you. Look, I like to match all kinds of different styles. My wife and I probably disagree on that a little bit, but Wayfair has everything we need for all the different styles we're looking for, inside, outside. Patio I want, patio she wants, some combination of the two. We got a house last fall, I should say, and outfitting with things at Wayfair has been the only way I can recommend doing it. Whether you're entertaining guests or just relaxing your own in the back, grilling, whatever the case may be, shop Wayfair to help you unwind in the backyard. Shop with a huge selection of outdoor furniture this summer. Get outside with Wayfair at wayfair.com. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Park Rangers Locked On Cougs here. And we just talked about Milos Uzan. Coming back, not come back. We'll see more on that as the week unfolds. But that was our quick 2-second update on where he's at after a couple days of the combine. And the goal, whether he's back or not, is to get back to the next Final Four, which is in Indianapolis, and ultimately cut down nets in April, right? We've checked off every other box. Now let's go cut down some nets in April. You were 65 seconds away from doing it just last month. How can we get back and take that next final step? What we're seeing as the numbers are rolling in, because now it's been about a month, so some things are finalized. The data indicates, shocker here, that winning helps make money. And I think that we think of athletics as being the front porch of the university. I told the Scott and Holman guys on yesterday's episode that, truthfully, if athletics is the porch of the university, we want the Houston basketball program to be the furniture, the paint job, the thing you see through the window. We want everything about that porch to be Houston Cougar basketball. And frankly, numbers indicate that coming off of a Final Four week, that's worth it to invest in that kind of a future. 18.1 million people watched the national title game. That was the most since 2019. For what it's worth, Houston and Duke, the Final Four matchup, had 16.3 million viewers for that as well. That was the highest tourney viewership across the entire NCAA tournament since 1993. For reference as to how many people, though, 16.3 million viewers for a college basketball game like Houston Duke or the 18.1 million that watched the national title game with Houston in it. The 2024 NBA Finals, which had international superstar Luka Doncic, you had the Boston Celtics, the global brand that they are, with a couple of superstars of their own, right? It was the Celtics' first chance to win a title in a couple years. Luka Doncic was kind of this electric star, rose to the Western Conference playoffs that year, right? That NBA Finals averaged 11.3 million viewers per game. Now, it's not quite the same when it's not a single game sample size and everyone understands the stakes. They didn't get to the game 7 point that would have probably felt more singular game like the national championship game. But it's pretty darn indicative of how big an audience Houston drew when they got to the title game. And frankly, the brand of basketball that people watched in the Duke-Houston game carried over to the Florida-Houston game. That's a big, big deal. For Houston specifically, they had a nearly 300% increase in year-over-year viewership from year 1 in the Big 12 to year 2 in the Big 12. That means that people got word of what was happening in Houston after they ran through the Big 12 in the first year and tuned in to watch it happen all over again the second year. And I got news for you folks. It'll probably happen with the same kind of data, if not better numbers, as they look to see Houston do it again in a third year in the Big 12. The advertising equivalent value, which is a look you do when you're looking at what social media marketing does for your programming, because social media marketing can functionally feel free because if everyone's talking about you, right, that's value you're getting without having to spend anything on it. Houston estimated $6.16 billion in advertising equivalent value from social media mentions. More than half of that 6.16 billion was in the week surrounding the Final Four. 63.2 million organic impressions. That's a lot for the folks at home. 54,000 new followers on social media accounts for the official University of Houston accounts across all social media platforms. A 250% increase in website traffic on the school's website. The school's website during the Final Four week, and they saw a 14% rise in admission inquiries during March Madness. And that gets me to what I mentioned at one point. Eddie Nunez says something about the value of this when trying to figure out what to talk about with Kelvin Sampson's contract extension would be. Don't have a final number on that. But I said then and I say now that when you invest in athletics as a university, it's not just the present tense success. That 14% rise in admissions is significant, right? That's singularly March Madness. That's not high school juniors that thought it was fun and will apply next year, or that freshman that loves basketball and wants to cover a basketball team when they grow up and say, I want to go to Houston and get to cover one in person, or that, I don't know, that fourth grader that just really likes the way that red team played that blue team and really liked how they shut down Cooper Flag. That's 14% in that month, right? And what that breeds as you bring more people to university through athletic experiences is future students who turn into future alumni, who bring their kids to future events, who donate money back once they're successful with their college degrees to future buildings, to future endowments. It just keeps growing. And truthfully, I understand that 14% rise in admissions is a number that's quantifiable and tangible. But this is why investing in winning athletic programs benefits the whole school. Because how that number extrapolates out, and you may think I'm being too thin on that, but how that number extrapolates out is something you just can't calculate for the whole school. And so while Dr. Couture has talked about growing the university in a bunch of different ways and taking it to a bunch of different places and really has elevated the academic profile of the school a lot in our tenure. Like, if you go back and look at where those rankings were for the University of Houston once upon a time to now, and how much renovation there's been, how much money's flowed into campus, and all the ways that the university has been elevated since she started doing things. And no one's perfect. I'm not saying anyone is, right? When you put this kind of investment, Fertitta, and should point out, Fertitta being an ambassador, he has commented that he's still going to be involved. He's just not going to be chair of the board. When you bring in the Fertitta kind of athletic dollars, and you find guys like Eddie Nunez who have the gusto to make these decisions quickly, rationally, and get to moving things forward, the vision to push things forward, you go out and get Kelvin Sampson. Right? You go out and get a program builder like Willie Fritz. You go out and even on the volleyball side of things, track, all you start putting these things together. You'll get Coach Mitchell on the women's basketball side of things. Great hire they just made, right? We'll see what they do in softball. We'll see what the future of the baseball program holds. But on the whole here, what you're seeing is how building a strong winner, especially in a revenue sport, I'm not going to act like it doesn't help, but building a strong winner ultimately helps you build everything else on campus you're trying to build, right? And obviously, when you're looking at a world where more and more often dollars equal success in athletics, you're seeing big NIL funds lands top recruits. You're seeing transfer portal guys talking openly about contracts they're signing and where they're signing them. I get all that. The house settlement's coming down at some point. Eddie Nunez said we're going to pay whatever the maximum dollar amount is from that. We know that Landon Gosling and Lincoln Cougs are growing that program as well. This is also how you get money to the school, right? This is also how, and putting it in the right people, finding the right places and ways to be successful, and then letting it build is ultimately a pretty strong way to do it too. Speaking of pretty strong ways to do it, Houston wraps the regular season this weekend. They wear their blue uniforms on Thursday as they play Arizona in the H. I want to talk about that and baseball a little bit and what's on the line this series. But first, Locked on Cougs, Parker Ainsworth here talking about the Houston Cougars wrapping up the regular season in baseball this weekend with a important series against Arizona. I say important because presently Houston sits in 10th place, about a half game at a ninth place, and ultimately they're only a game and a half at a eighth place. Eighth place is presently Oklahoma State. You had a pretty competitive series with them where you won the first one, didn't get to play a second one, and as somewhat despicable as it was, Coach Whitting nearly got you a cancellation in the third one based on some bad behavior. And you feel okay though if you played them like, okay, we got a shot there on a theoretical neutral field, right? If you were to win that game, you play Arizona State in round 2. While the games 2 and 3 of that series were not great, you did beat them in their place in the first game, the Friday night game, which is theoretically their best starter. I feel like you got to feel pretty good about your chances versus them, as that you at least as good as your chance versus them as you would anyone in that top 4 that gets a bye in the first round of the Big 12 tournament, right? Texas Tech has the 9th seed. They're at BYU this weekend. BYU's really bad. Tech probably sweeps this weekend. And so you probably have to win your games and hope for something crazy to happen with the folks over in Lubbock to get that 9th seed. That being said, if you stay at the 10th seed, there's a very real chance you play Arizona in the first round. It would depend on what happens with TCU, but a really good chance you play Arizona in the first round. You still want to play well this weekend, even if you feel like catching Tech at the 9 spot is insurmountable. Because if you play well this weekend, that hopefully gives you guys some confidence in playing Arizona in the first round of the Big 12 tournament. I should point out, and I'd be silly not to, that it's nice to be talking about making the Big 12 tournament, given where baseball was on this game just a year ago. Admittedly, that was down. That was first in the Big 12, and all the pain for that, frankly, across basically every sport besides basketball, besides men's basketball. But you're improving, and I think people will hate to hear this, but I think regardless of what happens this weekend and the Big 12 tournament, Whitting has probably played his way into getting to coach another year at Houston. Some people think it's gotten stale. Some people have forgotten about some of those good years in the 2010s and whatnot. But ultimately, it is improvement. It is notable improvement, and there were like tangible things the team has accomplished this year that didn't last year. And I think if the guy's moving it forward, I guess you'd argue you want moving faster, but it's going to be hard to fire a guy moving a program forward. The coach that have been let go in this cycle, this first year in AD Eddie Nunez, have been people that did not move forward this year, right? Vesley in softball, Huey in women's basketball. Yeah, I guess you could argue they say the same. They went from bottom of the conference, but didn't move forward. Houston baseball's moved forward. And as they continue to move forward, they got Arizona this weekend. Arizona's got big bats. We mentioned when Houston played Arizona State last weekend, that having a big bat in the desert goes a long way because the air carries in the desert, right? They have 2 double-digit home run guys, 3 guys batting over 300. I thought it was interesting in looking up statistics on Arizona's season coming into the weekend that they're coming off a tough outing against Utah. The same Utah that Houston swept, which gives me some optimism about this weekend. Arizona lost the first 2 of the 3-game series of Utah at home. It was only the 3rd series loss for Arizona all season, so it kind of sticks out as weird. But Utah is not. Look, I'm going to piss off JT Wistersill and a bunch of people in Salt Lake City, and I always spend a chunk of my summer in the state of Utah for whatever various family reasons, but Utah's not good. And I don't I didn't go back and watch all three Arizona baseball games. It's not Locked On Arizona Wildcats, which apparently is a show we've got. But I do think it's weird that Arizona lost all three of those games. It looked like, statistically speaking, they left a lot of runners in scoring position. So I could see it being the kind of situation where Arizona played pretty well, but Utah was able to get themselves out of some jams or whatever. Arizona's a good baseball program. They did win the Pac-12 regular season last year. They've got, like I mentioned, a couple good bats, and they've got decent pitching, decent arms. The bats, I think, carry them, though, much like Arizona State. Houston's going to have to score some runs this weekend. These are not going to be low-scoring games. You're playing at home. It's the final home series for these seniors, and while you're guaranteed, or not guaranteed, I guess you all but locked up, I guess mathematically speaking, a spot in the Big 12 tournament. Actually, I think you do have, because they take 12 this year. While you feel like you've got a spot in the Big 12 tournament and that feels good about things, the Big 12 tournament might only last a day, right? Like, as far as these guys and this season and this team, you're kind of playing this weekend as if it's like, okay, who knows how many of these we got left, right? And I would expect another big day at Taylor Cox, big weekend, I should say. He and Xavier Perez kind of carry the load with the bats this weekend. Cinta's on the mound Thursday. It is interesting that it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series, so you think about like spacing between starts and all of that. He wasn't on the mound for a normal length outing last Friday, so I don't know that the day difference will change a whole lot. There was also no Tuesday game this week, right? And so you're feeling like you're maybe even a little more rested actually than typically if you had played no Tuesday game, right? It'll be interesting to see what they do. Okay, here's the deal. Saturday's the third game. Saturday, they hadn't announced any pitching. They've typically, the last several series at least, have been going with what feels like a everyone gets an inning kind of deal in that third and final game. And I wonder if we'll learn more about what Whitting and Houston think about seeding on Saturday, because it could determine what arms they put out there. If they feel comfortable in the 10th seed, they might just let it rock with like Malachi Lott and let it roll, man. Like, to see how it goes. If they feel like they have a chance to move into the 9th seed and it's worth doing, they may really push that one and stretch the arms out more than they should. Who knows, right? And so that's what I'm looking for this weekend. I need to see Houston's bats show up. I do think Houston wins a game this weekend. I kind of think they can steal two here. Steal the series at home. Houston's played better at home. And frankly, they played better on Fridays. And so you have a Friday game in the middle of it. You also, though, if they play better on Fridays because it's the first game, you get a game on Thursday. I think Houston can get two here. Again, Arizona coming off a really bad weekend of Wildcat baseball. So I think Houston can do that. I don't know if it's going to be enough to move them up in the seeding, though, and that could ultimately, if they've won Thursday and lost Friday or vice versa, and they don't know that the seeding is going to change any, they might just choose to rest guys on Saturday. We'll see. They're wearing the blues on Thursday. The blue game against A&M was canceled due to weather, so look out for those on ESPN Plus as well. We're breaking things down here as more happens with Milos Uzan, as more Final Four tidbits about the basketball program come in. Football season, off season's in full swing. You've got all kinds of things to make sure we understand about the roster heading into summer, workouts, and then baseball is still going. We get a softball coach at some point. We'll talk about that too. Talk about Houston Cougars each and every day here. Thank you so much for joining us like the everydayer you are. If you're looking for a second listen of the day, go check out Locked On College Basketball. Andy and Isaac are doing a great job of breaking down the offseason and college hoops over there. Locked On Cougars is primarily the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.